Well, I've been writing about cruise since around about mid-2010. I've always written about travel, and my ambition was to become an editor of a magazine, and the opportunity arose to become the editor of a magazine called Cruise International, and I edited that for 2 years, and then again, another opportunity arose to become editor of Cruise Critic in the UK, because they didn't have an editor at that point, and I got the job then. So I've been in this position for just under 5 years now. And I didn't see that as a long time, but the industry is a very dynamic one, and there's all sorts of things going on, and it's an exciting one and a fun one to write about. So plus I get to go on a lot of cruises, so that isn't a bad thing. So I guess that's the kind of the, longish answer to your question. I can't talk about other industries, but I can talk about the travel industry because I started off writing about aviation, car rental, believe it or not, business travel, and general travel, such as talking about tour operators and travel agents. But I began to specialize more and more in aviation and business travel, which is also an interesting and dynamic sector. But I feel that there's only so much you can do on an airplane. And what I mean by that is, even with this, A380, if you remember, Branson was talking about, we'll have gyms on board and swimming pools and jacuzzis. And anyone who designs a plane knows that that's nonsense. It's not going to work. It's about maximizing the number of people you can get on that plane. And one or two lines do some fun things, like Emirates has its suites or Etihad. But on a cruise ship, you can do anything. And I mean that most sincerely. The stuff that they have on cruise ships nowadays would give theme parks or Las Vegas a run for their money. So I suppose it's that in a way. Yesterday, for example, I went to the launch of Celebrity's new ship. It's called Edge, and we were given a virtual reality run through, one-to-one mock-ups of what's going to be on board. It was one of the most incredible things I'd seen in the. Well, it's all out now, it's all public, but we were under embargo for a while. But one of the things that they've got, which is the real standout one, is this, they call it the magic carpet. But what it is this structure that is kind of, it's at the side, one side of the ship, the starboard side, and it goes down on these two steel girder things, and it shifts from deck 16 down to deck 2. And has different functions on the way. So on deck 16, it's a restaurant. On 14, it's a bar. On 5, it's an extension to the promenade. And on 2, it's used for embarkation and for tenders. And it goes up and down the ship. Obviously it hasn't been built yet, but it's in the process of it. That was just one. Well, the one that everyone's talking about is Cuba, and that's going to be big this year. And it's primarily, as Brits, Cuba's always fascinated us, but we have had free travel there. We have an embargo on the place. But the reason I think why everyone's talking about Cuba is because, they're hoping the embargo is going to be lifted, but basically travel restrictions have. So all the cruise ships are going to Cuba this year. All the big ones, all the American ones. So I think, it will be, but obviously it will change it inevitably. And, if you go back 20 years, 30 years, I guess, although Cuba is unique, I'm sure there were a number of places in the Caribbean that were a lot less developed than they are now. And, it's that double-edged sword. The locals probably want the money and the investment, but we want to keep it how it was. And there's this balancing act, I came here first 4 years ago when it was in Miami. And even though I'm UK-based, it's very useful for me to come to the biggest cruise conference in the world. There's a number of, I cover UK and Europe, so there's a number of UK and Europe exhibitors. For example, in a couple of hours, probably less, I'm going to the Future of Cruising in Europe panel. So there's specific stuff that's really useful for me, and I get the opportunity to network, catch up with people. Plus my entire team has come down the Cruise Critic team has come down from New Jersey. I've got interviews. I've got a panel this afternoon. I've got to write some stories. I've got more meetings tomorrow. Then there's events in the evening. So there's a carnival dinner followed by a big party, and then I'm bookending this whole thing with a cruise on Friday to the Bahamas. The thing is, it's a super dynamic industry, like I was saying before, and I think that's one of the things that people really appreciate, because it's an industry that is, if you think about it, if you make widgets and you're sat at dinner trying to talk to someone about that, they'll fall asleep, right? But if you talk about the cruise industry, you can say, well, did you know they've got this thing that looks like the London Eye that goes up above the ship and you can look down on it. You've got simulated surfing, you've got skydiving, you've got rock climbing walls. You've got everything on these cruise ships, and they're doing even more stuff. So, plus, I mentioned right at the beginning about giving Las Vegas for a run for its money. You've got shows that are that's no longer on actually, but you've got West End shows, West End quality shows. You've got ice skating rinks. The thing that's frustrating, I sometimes, especially trying to explain to potential UK cruisers, is that they have a perception that it's all quite formal for older people, blah, blah, blah. But the stuff that is going on, particularly on Norwegian Cruise Line, Royal Caribbean, Celebrity, Disney, Carnival, this is really cutting edge stuff, and stuff for families and multi-gen.